up, though? Welcome back to the World Heavyweights live on WorldSports.com. I'm Easy, joined by Spinmo Rex, Young Chris, Nicholas Koloff, aka Microwave Mario. We are joined by Zonic, my guy from Bully Ball.
What up, though?
Were you in the house for the JB?
Yeah. I got like 5 text messages just because people saw my hair in the second row. So I was there. I was very impressed with how it went. I'm sure we're gonna get into it here, but overall, I felt pretty good about how it went. I feel like fans should feel a little enthusiastic about it. It seemed like he knew his stuff and he's energetic. He wants to be here, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I was in the house though.
What was your biggest takeaway from this press conference?
Big culture.
Yeah.
That's easily like my biggest takeaway. Like I knew that JB was kind of someone who's more of a culture guy. Like he's someone who obviously knows his X's and O's, but if he has one great skill, it's connecting with players. And you could really tell just by yesterday, the emphasis on positivity, on building an environment, the emphasis on kind of just getting a culture in the locker room going, a culture, he said, in that practice facility going, where if that becomes a place that's like, we're excited to go here, that leads to more wins. That leads to an overall better team. So I was really impressed by that. I was impressed by just overall his knowledge of the team. Like, I know they played Detroit 4 times a year, but, you know, he still had a pretty extensive knowledge of how he would use certain guys. And I thought that was pretty refreshing compared to last year where, you know, Monty didn't really say anything about anybody on the team, right? Like, not even Cade got a mention last year. So the fact that he went on about Cade, about Stewart, Duran, Ivy, Asar, even Ron Holland got some mentions as well. I was really impressed with how that went.
Yeah, I agree. I even felt there was at one point where you kind of like looked towards Langdon, you know, when mentioning grabbing some more talent and whatnot, but it feels like there's some cohesiveness. At least there's like guys that complement each other versus what it felt like last year and what's been reported is the factions. I like that we're moving towards that. I like JB Bickerstaff. We know what you and I go back and forth on. I go back and forth with tons of Pistons fans.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway when he's asked about the situation between Cade and Ivy and how he dealt with that in Cleveland? Because I took away as he's going to stagger the two. That was my takeaway.
So he said exactly what I said last time we were in here, where it was like you always want one of them on the court, right?
Yes.
And I don't know if Ivy's necessarily for sure the starting shooting guard this year, at least to start the year, especially because you have guys like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway now who can kind of challenge for that spot. But I am confident in how he's going to use Jaden Ivey. So now that he kind of seems to understand that, okay, we're going to use Jaden in sets where he's using his movement a lot more rather than just kind of standing still and taking the ball up the court. We want him kind of coming off of screens, or we want him, you know, coming around the corner. We want things like that. That shows that he kind of understands Jaden Ivey's game, so that, yes, if it doesn't go well this year, then we kind of have a read on, okay, he gave Ivy a fair shot, right? Because like last year, Ivy had to balance, like, is he coming off the bench? Is he starting next to Cade? Is he getting staggered? Is, you know, all these other questions, and then there's just not the spacing around him and all these other things where it didn't really feel like he was put in the position to improve. So if he doesn't improve this year, if he doesn't say, if we can't come out of this season being like, okay, Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham either work together or show that they can work together, then you kind of know what you have here. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that as kind of, we talked about it yesterday, to where he said he wants to bring the best out of both of them, put them both in the best situations possible. And I think like Ivy coming off the bench with guys like Fontecchio and Tim Hardaway Jr., if Malik Beasley was in the starting lineup, I think that would be the best for him, because him getting downhill and kicking the ball out to shooters is where he's at his best.
Yeah, I think having, like, let's say you have a bench lineup of, like, I don't know, Ivy, Tim Hardaway, Asar, throw out your front court. I don't know if you want to say Paul Reed and Stu or something, but something like that. I think you set up Ivy to kind of see what he can do both on ball and off ball. It gives him that chance, because Asar is someone who can kind of create on ball as well. He's obviously not going to shoot the 3 ball that well, but he's able to play make. So I think having that and having shooters around him with even 2 centers who can space the floor with Paul Reed and Isaiah Stewart, if they do run that out, it's kind of hard to tell how they're going to run things out right now. But just kind of looking at the team, it's easy to see that, like, they're in a position to improve, and their skill sets are now in a position where if you don't improve or show signs of improvement, at this point, it's kind of more on you versus roster construction versus coaching versus all those things. It's not really on the external factors. It's about you now. So I think that's a huge, huge win for this team. Just even if, and I personally don't believe this, but even if they're like 14th in the East this year, they end with like, I don't know, 25 wins.
Yeah.
The fact that you can come out of this season knowing what you have in certain guys is such a vast improvement over this year, because you ended the season this year with guys like Marcus Sasser, who, showed flashes, but you didn't really know what you have in him. You still don't.
Yeah.
Guys like Asar, you kind of understand what you have in him, but that's only because he showed it, right? It wasn't really the system he was in. He didn't really get many chances to grow. He just kind of was out there to do stuff, and he just happened to be good at a lot of things he does besides three-point shooting. Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, we came out of this season with pretty much a fully healthy season of Cade and Ivey, not knowing if they work together.
Yeah.
That's an abject failure, right? Like, I know, I mean, you know, but like the fact that like
I knew before,
you know, it's the verdict still out, but
well, I mean, listen, I've said, and this is what I've been saying too. If it does work, it's going to be in that staggered situation, right? Like, allowing they both need spacing. Ivy has the lead ability to get to the rim. Allow him to kick it out. Somebody spread the floor. Same with Cade. He's the mini magician. He's a bigger point guard. He's going to eat inside as well. Plus, he's also like a better shooter. Like I think both those guys need spacing. I think to maximize their value with them spacing. One thing I want to get, unless you have any more on the Ivy stuff.
No.
Two things actually, but one thing I guess with the Reed signing, is there any writing on the wall for Isaiah Stewart with that? Especially with like him already being rumored to have been poked around, questions were asked.
I think it's fair to think Stu might be on the move. I would say it doesn't solve that question of the rumors around Stu. I've pretty much held firm for a very long time now. Of all the guys on this team, I would say if I had like a personal favorite, it's probably Stu, right? Like I always liked the way he played. And it's not just because like, I identify with, but he just does the dirty work, right? Like he does all the things that you want out of a big. Besides, like, he's a little bit undersized, right? But that's why they had him at the power forward position this year. I really think if you have Isaiah Stewart and you can play him at the center position, you really can see him maximize his potential versus kind of playing him at the power forward position. And okay, he's going to shoot some corner threes. When you force him out of the paint, you're taking away things that are special about his game, right? Because he's someone who can kick it out to other shooters. He's someone who can even create down low. I don't think he was really put in the right position. I think he was played out of position. Yes, he can shoot, but that shouldn't be his only skill set. With that being said, Paul Reed does a lot of the things offensively that Isaiah Stewart does. Mm-hmm. And his contract is $8 million per year, which is not a small contract, right? And it's guaranteed over the next 2 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So it kind of is like, okay, is Paul Reed now your third string center? Like, that's a really good third string center. Don't get me wrong, but like, he almost feels too good not to play. So I wonder if they're going to go with maybe using Paul Reed as that power forward and Stewart as the center in the bench lineups, or if they see Paul Reed and Stewart challenging for minutes. But I don't know. It's really interesting. I honestly cannot wrap my mind around how it would fit as it is right now. So I feel like there's definitely some moving pieces. I would like to see Isaiah Stewart stay, for the record. I think he's someone who embodies what it means to be a Detroit Piston. I think of all the things Troy Weaver ever said, that's probably one of the more true things he ever said, was that Isaiah Stewart is the embodiment of Detroit Pistons basketball. I know some people don't like watching him. It is what it is. I'm not going to argue with that. But, I think he's a really important piece. And if he does leave, you'll see his value immediately after.
Where does Fontecchio fit into that? Because you talked about Paul Reed possibly being the four off the bench. That's the role I saw for Fontecchio, being a guy that can come in, space the floor, and be the four.
I mean, I could see anywhere where you could start a lineup of Cade, Beasley, Fontecchio, Tobias Duren as it is right now. I could see Fontecchio coming off of the bench. He's someone who doesn't necessarily need to start, but he's a luxury at this point where like he can start, but he also can't come off the bench, and his contract isn't like to where like, okay, we have like, I don't know, $20 million sitting on the bench right now. as like our 6th, 7th, or 8th guy. He's $8 million per year, right?
Yeah.
Which I think we all agree is insane value for someone like
I love him.
Fontecchio. But
Fettuccine.
exactly. But at the same time, I don't think he necessarily has to start to be effective. I think regardless, he'll have a role on this team, and I think he'll have a pretty important role on this team as a sharpshooter, as someone minus the big toe injury this last year is pretty available in his career, and someone who's honestly a decent two-way guy. Like, his defense is really not bad at all. He's one of the better 3-and-D guys that they could get.
My favorite saying for a white athlete, sneaky athletic. And Fontecchio truly embodies that. Yeah. So everyone said when a white guy's athletic, they can never just be athletic. It's always sneaky athletic. Yeah. It's always sneaking up on you. There is a thing, I don't want to give too much credibility to it because we kind of shit on the guy on our show, to be honest with you. I think we all took turns just like Kendrick and him. Just wah, wah, wah. But Brett Siegel, I believe it is, from Clutch Points, put it out there the Pistons were willing to depart with Duren, looking for like a score to put next to Cade. I feel like everything we've heard from Langdon, that couldn't be further from the truth. I believe it's a case with Stu and maybe Ivy, but I just, listening to him talk, I think they're going to experiment with these young guys, just find out what they have, these young guys, at least into the deadline. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to say right now, just because when you look at the roster, you kind of like, I think it's not crazy to say this is a pretty decent roster.
Right? Decent, yeah.
I like what they did a lot.
Multiple stars that were on playoff teams last year, and you have a guy like Cade Cunningham, if you truly believe in him.
100%. So, but the thing is, you added, I believe, 4 new guys to your rotation. And let's say you probably run out most nights a 10-man rotation. That's half of your rotation, right? And then the other half of your rotation's all young guys. So how is that going to balance out? Are guys just not going to get minutes? Are they not going to get as many minutes? Like, how is this going to work to where everybody can kind of develop? Because there's no way all of these players can develop. Just logically, they can't. Do you move off of some pieces now that you may not believe in long term? I think that's a complete possibility. I know. I mean, like let's be real. I mean, they added 2 shooting guards who should be getting minutes this offseason. That's kind of like, unless,
and 2 forwards.
Yeah, and it's now like, okay, Ivy, yes, is seen, at least how we see it on the outside, as kind of a long-term piece, but the moves you're making don't really correlate. Because if you want Ivy to be that off-ball guy, then why would you play him as a backup point guard?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, certain things I think are said, like I said last time, like when we talked about acquiring bad contracts, I said, I think, yes, that might be something they're looking at, but I don't think it's going to be the only thing they did. And, here we are. I think most of their moves have been done through free agency minus the Tim Hardaway trade.
Yeah.
So I would think there's probably at least one more move to happen before the season ends, or before the offseason ends.
Duren's part of the conversation, though, you think?
It's hard to tell, man. It really is. Because, I would think Duren is likely to stay, right? Just because of his the way he's seen around the league already. Like, he's on Team USA Select 2 years in a row now. You can go on any Instagram comment section where Jalen Duren gets posted, and some NBA player is going to be like, "I like his game," right?
Yeah.
It's just the main hole in his game is his defense.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big hole.
And pause. But yeah. But yeah, it is. And it's a thing of, do you believe in him to develop that side of his game? And if you do, okay, do you want him to be the starting center then? Is that maybe why you got Paul Reed, is to be the starting center and stretch the floor? Or do you want Isaiah Stewart? You know what I mean? It's kind of a thing where certain things aren't adding up.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Like, certain things aren't adding up to where I think anybody not named Cade or Ron Holland or Asar Thompson probably could be moved. I'm not saying they're going to be, but like, looking at the way things have been addressed, it makes sense if things were in play.